Welcome back to Cosmic Confluence, listeners, the space where ancient wisdom meets modern life and where we ask the questions that do not always have easy answers. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and let me tell you, listeners, today's episode is for anyone out there who has tried to fix their life by thinking harder, pushing harder, doing more, or optimizing themselves into exhaustion and still felt disconnected from their body, their joy, and their sense of meaning. We talk a lot about wellness as something we consume, a class, a supplement, a routine. But just imagine this, what if well being is not something you add, but something you remember through the body? My guest today works at the intersection of science, soul, ritual, and design. She has spent over 30 years inside corporate wellness and holistic consulting. And today she is helping shape what embodied leadership and radiant living might actually look like in real spaces, real companies, and real lives. Hayley Hunter Hines is a wellness futurist, luxury experience architect, and founder of Soul Sparkle Living. She's also the creator of the Sacred Shakti Method, a framework that centers somatic power, ritual, and presence in a world that rarely slows down enough to feel. So, Hayley, welcome to Cosmic Confluence, and I'm really, really honored to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Um, Haley, before we proceed further, to explore about the Sacred Shakti method, one thing that I really, really, I must share from my end, because in the Indian, in the Hindu culture, um, you know, we have learned since childhood that everything, whatever we see around us, in fact, including ourselves, we are all born from this sacred feminine power, which is the Shakti. Even the Hindu gods, Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu, they're all born from Shakti. So this is the most powerful, the most sacred, feminine energy that is attributed to the creation of everything that we are seeing or we may not be able to see around us. So that is something I really, really find it very beautiful how you named it.
Oh, it is the divine life force, isn't it? Within all of
That exactly, exactly. And it is the feminine energy.
us. Right.
Super. Okay. So, Haley, you describe the Sacred Shakti method as a path to somatic power and radiant living. Now, these words they are beautiful, they sound beautiful, but then for someone who's just trying to survive through, like, go through somehow through their week, it can feel abstract. So what problem were you actually trying to solve when you started to create the Sacred Shakti method?
Well, I think the main thing is reconnection to self and body, right? So my own inner wisdom, my own feminine energy and essence, and also a way to just stay connected to your own well-being through movement and motion and meditation that's mindful. And I think we're taught all these ways to you know, biohack or work out or go to the gym or all these things that are actually so much more there's nothing wrong with those things, but there's such a more masculine energy. And what I think I was looking for was something that would bring me back to the ease and the grace and the feminine flow within me. And I think that's how this method was actually born.
Hmm, that makes sense, Haley. That makes sense here because um uh, let me clarify that I'm not trying to bring any gender biasness or anything here, but you know, all of us, we are this beautiful blend of masculine and feminine energy. If we attribute masculine energy to strength or aggression or this, unhinged, untamed energy, um, feminine energy is the one that kind of, channels it down, it nurtures. I think that's exactly what I realize, how you explain this. So that really makes sense.
Well, I think too, we all have obviously both masculine and feminine energy within us, all of us, right? Some of us are more masculine, more feminine, etc. But at the end of the day, you know, when we most of the time, and especially women that are, in their empire building or in their career building, it's very easy to go
Mm,
fully more into their masculine energy. And this practice really allows you to kind of restabilize and reintegrate the two and step
mm.
back into that fully feminine energetic space, which is a lot of women's desire. They just are not sure how to do it sometimes. And so this practice really does help kind of bring that energy back to the forefront.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed, agreed. Um, and when you say somatic power, some people hear empowerment while others hear something spiritual that could be uh, inaccessible or impractical as well. So how would you explain somatic power to someone who is skeptical, busy, or they would think that this is all woo woo, not particularly interested in the spiritual language?
Well, this isn't, I mean, somatics aren't necessarily spiritual. It's really more embodiment. It's really backing into the body and allowing yourself to feel. And I think, a lot of people, a lot of us that are on the spiritual path, we end up, it's almost like we're trying to transcend the humanness, right? And really, at the end of the day, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. And so our ability to ground back into our body, to embody the truth of who we are, both our humanity and our divinity, it requires this little skin that we're in, right? And so by using these somatic practices, we're able to really stay grounded, to regulate our nervous system, and then embody the, maybe it is the spiritual teachings, maybe it is these other things that we've learned, but we're grounded, we're rooted, we are embodied in this human form, which is the best and most beautiful gift that we have.
Absolutely. No doubt in there. Great. Okay. And um, you emphasize ritual as a core part of the Sacred Shakti method, but then we already kind of, before even actually practicing or getting into the routine, we kind of feel this fear of not perfectly able to perform that routine, like habits or checklists. And that itself is such a huge, deterrent or a blocker to actually embark on that journey. So um, how is ritual different from just another thing people feel pressured to do correctly or perfectly, Haley?
I think to me, ritual just creates a sacredness in daily living, right? And it's bringing that sacredness into everything we do, whether it be a workout, a movement practice, a meditation, a spiritual experience, or just your day to day, the way you eat, the way you approach relationships, the way you approach conversation. I think anything can be or can become a ritual, whether it be having a cup of tea or making a cup of coffee and or making preparing a beautiful meal for yourself. It's the way in which you approach it and the intention in which you embody it. And so I think for me, ritual is just allowing life to become sacred and being grateful and having that intention in everything that we do, because then it actually creates, I think, a feeling of connection, not only to ourselves, but to those that we're sharing life with, those that we're serving, maybe if we're in some type of service capacity, um, to whatever type of divine or spiritual practice that we have. And also in the way that we allow ourselves to just be holy, like be both human and divine, right? And so to me, it just is a way of doing life. And so embodying that ritual brings that gratitude back into our day to day life.
Hmm. Like one specific thing that, I really loved, what you shared is um it's ritual as relationship, as a way to connect, not just something which is performative just for the sake of, doing or performance. And I think this distinction has to matter because many of us have um, internalized this idea that, if we are not feeling transformed, then we are doing something wrong. And then we get into that full, that loop of judging ourselves and, not having that compassion for ourselves.
Right. And also just the judgment and the overthinking, right? The
Yeah.
just being in your mind about it. It's like, no, we need to drop out of that into our heart. And then so it's almost like a three-part process. It's like dropping from your heart, from your head back to your heart, like there. And then even from your heart, like to your belly, like down into the roots and the truth of who you really are. And then doing life from that way, from that place. That's where the magic is, I think.
I agree. I agree. And I think this perfectly aligns with you know, the theme of our show. Like you bridge neuroscience, somatic intelligence, spiritual frameworks. Like there is science, there is soul. So some people love that integration, including me. But then there are people out there, who would be wary of mixing science with soul language.
Mm.
So, how do you respond to critics who say blending spirituality into wellness makes it less credible or less rigorous?
Well, I think the interesting thing is there actually is research that shows those that have a spiritual practice end up being more happy, more calm, more connected, and healthier overall than those that don't. Like it is actually based on research, right? So the framework that I use in my work is the biopsychosocial spiritual model. And then I added my own little bit, which is the sparkle. And so those methodologies are actually all based on science. So it's really interesting if people have questions about it or don't. I'm doing, air quotes, like if they don't believe in it, it's actually not a religion. It's actually is based on research. So, it's not really for us to um, force anyone to do anything, right? For me, I just offer the path and give them permission to choose their own adventure based on what feels aligned for them. And if it's they take part in this part and skip one other part, that's fine, right? We're all sovereign, at least we should be. And so for me, it's more about we build the framework based on what the research shows and deems important to incorporate. And then it's up to the individual really to decide what works for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that is the mantra here that, take what you find useful or good for you and leave the rest.
Amen.
Um, I think that is something, it sometimes gets lost in translation, especially during wellness conversations, particularly online or on social media. So I think it kind of puts a huge dent on the actual essence of uh, wellness through different channels or modalities.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we all are, like I said, we're all sovereign and we get to choose what works for us. My job is not to fight with people on the internet about what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the vibe. And so to me, it's just we present what feels aligned based on both kind of divine assignment and divine appointment. And again, the merging, which is what I love about your show, is that it is where science and spirituality intersect because I think that's actually where we are all meant to do life in our own way based on what we know works and what we feel called to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Huh. You work in luxury wellness spaces, retreats, high-end environments, really. Um, I mean, radiant living, one of the um goals, or you can say aspirations for me as well, here, as I am learning every day, every moment through these conversations, through practical situations I'm facing in my life right now, is,
Mm.
radiant living. But then it can also feel out of reach for many people. Um so it can be, a kind of a challenging question, but then I think it's a very necessary part of the conversation. How do you reconcile radiant living with the realities of, financial stress, caregiving, survival mode living? Because every month, every day, right now, the world is kind of going crazier. We're like, how can we reconcile, radiant living? Because we would feel like I have too many problems and challenges to tackle. I don't have the time to even think about radiant living.
Well, I would say that while we cannot control everything, clearly, in the world and in our lives, there are certain things that we can control. And I would encourage people, no matter where they are, to address the things that you actually have control over. So, for example, what you're putting in your body, the environment that you're in your own space, the connection to technology and what you're inputting into your mind, what you're consuming. So basically, what you're consuming physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? S- If you are able to, let's say, reduce the amount of noise, and by noise, I mean connection to social media, it might be connection to news and actual media,
Mm, mm,
those two things, reducing any chemicals or toxins or any garbage that you're putting into your actual body through food, water, um, you know, negativity in any form, right? All of those things, we have at some level the ability to control that level of consumption. And it could even be just creating a peaceful and calm environment that you live in, right? So you're getting better sleep, reducing noise, you're reducing fluorescent lights, right? Like some of those things that are just fairly simple to modify that don't require going out into the world and changing everything in your community or in the world because that's not always available, right? So being able to just manage your own self, your own energy, and that of those that you put into your own little circle, that's a huge step and a huge start in changing your own frequency and vibration. So that way, when you do go out in the world, you're emanating more radiance, more light, more love, more grace. But that has to start within, right? So starting with your own self, less concerned about what everyone else is doing, that is going to shift you into the frequency that you need to enact change when you do go out into the wild.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And one particular thing that you mentioned, Haley, it's kind of now has become my own way of looking at um everything, is kind of categorizing what is controllable and what is not.
Right.
We cannot control everything, at least whatever is there right now within our reach, and whatever I can control, let's work on that, because um I've realized that, you cannot burn yourself out or judge yourself, for taking a wrong decision 10 years back or 5 years back. It just happened. You cannot change that, but at least you can work on the present, and maybe just having a plan, concrete plan. I mean, of course, you plan, and we say that, man proposes, God disposes. um you can at least work on the controllables, at
Right.
least in the present right now.
Right. Right here, right now. That's all we have. This moment.
Yeah, true, true. Thank you for addressing that. And before we conclude, one particular word that you mentioned is embodied, and then Um, this is something that is connected with leadership and the future. And this is not just in business. And I think we're all, we all aspire to be CEOs or leaders of our own. And you talk about embodied leadership as the future of how we live and lead. Now, many systems reward disembodiment. Like, we people respect, hustle, numbness, constant output. Um, what has to break or change, Haley, in our current culture, for embodied leadership to actually take root? It's a big question, but yeah.
It's a great one. And I feel like anything that relates to hustle, strain, performative, any of those words that just kind of make you contract in your heart center, like, oh, like they don't feel good anymore, right? That's like 2025 energy. Now, 2026 and beyond is going to be truly authentic, um, real, raw conversations that matter about things that people care about, like exactly the kind of conversations we're having here on the podcast. I think that is going to become more and more relevant and desired, and people are going to crave real connection, things that matter. Back to like face to face, heart to heart, belly to belly conversations in real life as well, versus just this kind of parasocial social media. Oh, I have all these friends on social media. No, actually, they're not actual friends because you don't really know them until you know them, right? So to me, we've already like passed the place of where influencer culture, all of that. To me, it's going to go back to simplification, like simplify to amplify. We simplify our life to amplify the joy that we have within it. And it's becoming a little more, it's like an elegant simplicity, right? So it's simplifying and it's deepening the connections, deepening our conversations, and really surrounding ourselves with people that we truly want to be around, not because of what we can do for each other, but because of who we are to each other.
Absolutely. And this is such an important, I believe, for all of our listeners, such an important takeaway because um I believe nature, everything find its way of, achieving that balance. There will be a kind of a the highest, point of tolerance, that criticality, point of criticality, at which everything will go like berserk and here and there. But then there will be a time when that balance has to achieve, because that's how historically, we have seen how the nature works.
Mm. Yes. And it's shifting. And it will not be the same again. Yeah. And that's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So we're here for
That is beautiful, beautiful. Haley, uh, I mean, this is hopeful. It is confronting, but I believe we shouldn't go into that toxic positivity loop. But
it.
at least we can seek hope, um, with togetherness, and it starts individually. And before we wrap up this conversation, if listeners, they would like to further explore about the Sacred Shakti Method, they would like to connect with you, if they have their thoughts or opinions after this conversation, what would be the best way to connect?
So a couple of ways to stay in touch. One is to go to my website, my little online sparkle home. It's soulsparkleliving.com. So everything that I do and create specifically around the Sacred Shakti method will be available there. And then also just following me on socials. Most of the socials are under my full name, so Hayley Hunter Hines, and I think you'll probably have that the in the show notes. But so on Facebook, on Instagram, Threads, etc. It's usually always under my full name or Soul Sparkle, either one.
Amazing. So, listeners, as I always do, I'll have all the links and details in the show notes. So, refer to them along with this episode on whichever platform you listen to your podcast to. And listeners, I believe this conversation, it feels like an invitation to come back into the body without romanticizing the process, not to escape the world or the reality, but at least to meet it with more honesty, presence, and regulation. So, Haley, thank you so much for this really beautiful yet practical conversation. Really loved it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
And to all of the listeners, if this episode stirred something, I encourage you not to rush to interpret it. Give it time, sit with it, feel what landed, notice what resisted. Because sometimes the most sacred work is not changing your life, it is finally listening to it. And thank you to everyone for listening to Cosmic Confluence. Until next time, stay curious, stay embodied, and stay connected. This is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.